Okay, so I take it everybody who is still in the room does not care about hockey. That's fine with me. We got a studio to talk about. That's more fun than hockey, right? So we're going to continue the studio that we started last week. Last week we designed two classes, menu and menu item, and we focused in particular on the fields of those classes, whereas today we are more concerned with the behavior of those classes. So this is what we did last time. They do a little recap, and we've got the code for that. We're going to extend those examples out to add this functionality. So our goal is to kind of go down this list and think about, okay, if I want to have a way to add or remove menu items from the menu, right? How do I do that? So I want to have a way of adding and, oh, this is student in course, so let's get the menu and menu item up. So if I want to have a way of adding, removing menu items from the menu, where does that go? Where am I going to put that? I got two options, either the menu class or the menu item class. The menu class, and actually you can see that I've got this array list of menu items from last time, right? That we can use to store any menu items that get passed. So I want to add a menu item, so I'm going to make a method to do that, and I have to decide on the usual things, right? Like what's the access modifier? So what do we think for that one? Starts with a P. Private. So we should be able to add things to our menu from outside of the class. I think probably should be public. What about the return type? Anybody have thoughts or opinions on the return type? I add a menu item to the menu and I want to return anything? Nothing? Void. I could return an array list where the array list represents what? The modified menu, right? I could also just return void. I think that's fine as well. Add item, and then parameters. What do I need as a parameter? A menu item. Okay? And so then I want to take this menu item and add it to this list. And so we saw a very similar example to this in the coding exercise today, right? I can simply take that menu item and add it to the array list, and we're good. We got it. And I need a way of removing menu items as well, which is actually going to look very similar to this, right? One small change. Oops. I'll say items.remove instead of items.add. Now, in the exercise we did earlier, I had to worry about things like adding the same student to the course more than once. Is that something I need to worry about here? I see some people nodding yes. I see some people like, whatever. So, I mean, if that's something we care about, we know how to fix that problem, right? We saw it in the exercise today. I can just slap an if statement on here. Not items.contain m. And that'll take care of that problem. If that's not something you care about, you want to see the same menu item on the menu multiple times, then by all means, you don't need to do this. But I think that takes care of adding and removing items. So a way to tell if a menu item is new. So if I look at my menu item class from last time, you'll recall that I have this field called isNew. And so if I want to have a way of telling whether a menu item is new or not, what do I have to do? This might be an easy one, or I mean, it might be a little tricky, but How can I access this field? A getter, which I don't actually have one right now, but I could certainly make one, right? It's just a getter. It's telling us that we need a getter for this. So that's fine. Let's make a getter. The return type is going to be the same as the type of the field. Get is new. Return this dot is new. There we go. So that one was solved with a getter. 2 down, a few more to go. This one feels very similar, right? A way to tell when the menu was last updated. So let's take a look at our menu class. From last time, we have this date, right? Last updated. So it's kind of the same idea. I just need a way of accessing that value. I need a getter. I need a getter for this. So we can do that. Public date, get last updated. Return that value. All right. So far, none of these methods have been particularly complicated, but we're getting to some trickier ones. A way to print out both a menu item and an entire menu. What does that sound like? So print out a menu item and an entire menu. What do I need to accomplish that? I could use toString. I could use toString to accomplish that if I wanted to. I don't have to. I could make a method called print item or print menu and do it in that method if I wanted to. Or I could do some combination of the two, right? I could do a toString in one class or and not in the other one necessarily. I think toString is good to have around. So we can talk about creating, let's start with menu item, right? Which of these values do I want to include in my toString? Of these 4 that I see, which do I want to include? Or I could ask the opposite, are there any that we don't want to include? It's really up to you all, right? I mean, it's our design. We can include or not include as many as we would like. And actually, I'll show you another little trick since we're on the topic of having IntelliJ do work for us. It'll create toString for me as well. I didn't show you that before, but you know, toString is another very common method, and it works as you might expect. I select which fields I want to be part of toString. So if we want all of them, that's okay. And then I hit OK, and it creates a toString for me. So that makes our life a little bit easier. I could do the same for the menu. Let's do the same thing. There we go. There's a little bit of a problem with this one though, right? Or is there? What's an issue? What's a possible issue with menu toString? Last updated should be a date. Well, it is a date. So the formatting is a potential issue. Like, what's that going to look like? I don't actually know, right? I'm worried about this guy as well because this is a list. But I actually want to see all the values on that list, so I'm not sure if that's going to display correctly as well. But you know, let's leave it like this for now and try it. And if we don't like what it looks like, we can come back and try and tweak it a little bit and see if we can make it look a little bit better. I think we had one more thing on our checklist: a way to determine whether or not 2 menu items are equal. Okay, so we can do that. And I'm going to let IntelliJ do the heavy lifting for me again because it's late and I'm tired. So just like we saw before, I have to decide which ones do we want to use to determine if a menu item is equal to another menu item. Does anybody have any opinions on this? Should we use price to determine if 2 menu items are equal? Could be the same thing with different prices. So I think, yeah, we could leave that one off. What about the description? So there is no name, right? Like description is the closest thing that we got that actually describes what it is. So I feel like that one's a pretty strong candidate to be included, I believe. What about category? That would be like breakfast, lunch, dinner, or I think maybe more like appetizer, entree. What do we think? Should that be included? It's, yeah, fries in a couple different places. I mean, it's not an easy question, right? It's not an easy question. So there's some wiggle room here. There's not necessarily one correct way to do it. And not everybody is necessarily going to agree on the way to do it, right? It depends on what you think. I'm going to leave it checked. I think maybe it should be included. If you disagree with me, you don't have to include it. It's your design. You can do it the way you want. What about the last one, is new? Should I include that? I see some people shaking their head no. I wouldn't. This is how I would do it. But again, you're welcome to disagree with me. If you don't like this design, you have reasons to design a little bit differently, you have the power to do that. And please do. So we're going to choose those for our equals method. Description and category, and consider that that's good enough. Actually, it should be noted, right, that even though it basically told us that we needed this method, there was another reason why we needed it. Even before we got to this bullet point, there was another reason why we had to do that, which is what? We would have had to create equals even if this wasn't here. Why? What do we do in our code that required us to use equals? It's in our menu class. Contains, yeah. So how does it know if it's on the list or not? It calls equals on all the items on the list until it finds one that is true. Same thing for remove. How does it know which one to remove? It goes through the list and calls equals on all of them until it finds the right one, and then it removes that. So we would have needed to implement equals even if they didn't actually tell us that we had to, explicitly tell us that we had to do so. It was still necessary because of the fact that we use these two methods that rely on the equals method. All right, the last thing that it tells us to do is, down here at the bottom, is to create a class called restaurant with a main method, create a menu, add some things to the menu, and then print them out. So we'll do that last step here to wrap up the studio. That'll also give us a chance to see if our two-string methods work the way that we want them to or not, or if we have to tweak them a little bit. So I'm going to create a restaurant class. And I'm going to create a main method. Okay, so I want to create a menu item. How do I do that? What do I need to do? Menu item. Give it a name. So what do we want our restaurant to be? Fish. Okay. New. What's next? Menu item. And then I have to provide it with the information. It wants a price, a description, and a category. So it'll be, I don't know. Oh, I don't need the $sign. $12 fish, I don't know, salmon. For breakfast. People eat salmon for breakfast. I don't eat salmon for breakfast, but some people do. And let's make another one. Menu item, ice cream. That's my concept. Fish and ice cream. Vanilla. Dessert. Okay. So I've got a couple of menu items. Now I can make a menu and add these items to the menu. What's a good name for a fish and ice cream restaurant? I don't know. Fish and ice cream. Not a good name. Basque Fin Robin. Oh, wow. That is a good one, actually. I like it. What does a menu want? A menu wants nothing. That's all. It doesn't need anything. And so now I can add my menu items to this menu. Fish and ice cream is a long variable name. Add item fish. Fish and ice cream. Add item ice cream. And last, we'll print out the menu. Oops. And see what it looks like. Hopefully everything looks good, but if it doesn't, we can tweak toString real quick with the last few minutes and see where we're at. All right, so actually it's not too bad. It's a little bit in terms of the formatting. Here's the menu, and it says the items are menu item. There's my salmon, and then there's my vanilla ice cream, right? Oh, description vanilla. Well, okay. Just serve me straight vanilla. And then here's the date, which actually looks like a date. Could you format this differently? Yes. Do we have time to do that right now? Unfortunately, no, we do not. But if you have questions about that, I'd be happy to talk to you about it sometime. Actually, if we had more time, I would probably tweak my toString a little bit to make it look more like a menu and not like a one big long line of stuff. But it is 8:30, so I don't want to keep you guys past the time. Are there any questions? Any quick questions before we wrap it up? All right. Have a great week, everybody, and I'll see you back here on Thursday.